Championship clubs just love throwing ungodly amounts of money at that pot of gold that is a place in the Premier League. Most of that money ends up with the players. Brace yourself, here are the top 10 highest wage bills ever in the Championship. 10, 67 million, Norwich City 2020-21. Norwich won the Championship in 2021 by keeping star players at the club, having come down from the Premier League the previous year. It wasn't cheap, but it worked. Emi Buendia was the standout player in the league. Temi Pukki scored 26 goals. Ollie Skip was borrowed from Spurs. Remember, that number includes promotion bonuses. That will be a theme in this list. They are a good way of tempting good players to play maybe below their level, and they don't count towards FFP. 9, 67 million, West Brom 2019-20. The Baggies went up in second spot in 2020. They went all in on Slaven Bilic and star man Mateus Pereira in their second year down from the Premier League. It wasn't just nervy because of the big spend. This was the COVID interrupted season, and they stumbled over the line with plenty of big contracts left over from the Premier League weighing them down. Looking at how things are now, God, the Baggies fans wish they'd stayed up there. 8, 68 million, Watford 2020-21. Well, we've already had the champions from this year, Norwich. Well, Watford spent slightly more on wages and went up in second place. They had a bit more of a revolving door, fancy that, but the likes of Sarr, João Pedro starred to get them straight back, and some eye-watering Premier League contracts were reluctantly honoured at the same time. 7, 73 million, Fulham 2019-20. Another promoted team, but Fulham needed the playoffs under Scott Parker, despite the deck absolutely being stacked for them in terms of star power. The cheat code, Mitrovic stayed. Championship specialists Knockaert and Cavaliero were added to help him. It was close. They needed the playoffs and extra time in the final to get the job done. 6, 73 million, Aston Villa 2017-18. Now, this one is mental, as Villa, spoiler alert, are the only team on our list not to get promoted. This was under Dr. Tony Gear's crazy ownership. They spent a fortune buying up the division's best players the previous season, added more expensive experience on frees and loans in this campaign, lost in the playoff final under Steve Bruce. Reminder, there are no promotion bonuses in that giant number. Just crazy stuff. Before we go to the top 5, if you want to help support us, hit like, leave a comment, or if you're a real star, join up over on Patreon for some extra content and the chance to debate with me and the gang on our banterful and regular roundtable chats. 5, 75 million, QPR 2013-14. Now, this one's a bit legendary for a few reasons. Rangers famously had a higher wage bill than Jurgen Klopp's Dortmund Champions League finalists of the previous season. The fact that they are still on the list nearly a decade later with money going up and up and up is quite something. And, of course, they only just got promoted via the playoffs down to 10 men in the final, courtesy of that late Bobby Zamora goal. Lucky boy, Harry. 4, 78 million, Leeds United 2019-20. Here is the third promoted team from 2020 on our list, champions Leeds. They enticed Bielsa. He missed out in the playoffs in his first season. They backed him in season 2 by retaining starman Calvin Phillips, and then with loans and wages for Ben White, Helder Costa, Eddie Nketiah, and maybe the most expensive transfer per minute played in their history, Jean-Kevin Augustin. 3, 83 million, Aston Villa 2018-19. They're back one season after becoming the only team in our list not to go up. Villa did go up, but in the playoffs. Crazy Dr. Tony has now gone, and NSWE were the new owners. Jack Grealish powered them up with the help of some expensive loanees, Tammy Abraham, Tyrone Mings, Axel Tuan Zabi and Anwar El Ghazi. I'm sure they would have found a way, but it felt like they did this just in the nick of time with the parachute payments ending that season. 2. 90 million Newcastle 2016-17. Now Newcastle simply got relegated to the Championship and continued to operate like a Premier League club. They had a Champions League winning manager in Rafa Benitez. They drew an average gate of over 50,000. They raised around 100 million in player sales and spent aggressively, knowing they'd likely dominate the division, which, go figure, they did. One caveat here too, Newcastle also had another 22 million in onerous contract provisions not included in that wage number that would take you over 100 million, and it would put them at number 1. 90 million Fulham 2021-22. Welcome back, Fulham, our most recent champions. Remember, we won't know the number for this past season until April next year. They really didn't get rid of many from the previous Premier League season. Mitrovic hung around again and broke every goal scoring record in the book, with a couple of sidekicks coming in from Liverpool to make Fulham's the biggest ever Championship wage bill. So what did we learn? Well, other than Villa, all 9 of the other 10 teams on our list were promoted. That means if you spend the most, you go up, and if you go up, you spend the most, with this model of huge promotion bonuses kicking in, having reached the Premier League pot of gold. For those of you interested in the consequence of those good old parachute payments, you will be absolutely not surprised to hear that 9 out of the 10 top biggest ever Championship wage bills were paid by teams receiving parachute payments. Only Leeds in 4th were not receiving that Premier League broadcast bonus. And look at those dates, which just tells us things are going up and up and up in the Championship. Bournemouth and Forest, who went up with Fulham in 2022, are actually just a couple of places outside the top 10 in 12th and 13th. 2 out of the 3 sides in 2021 are on our list. All 3 from 2020 are in there. So well done, Brentford. Out of the last 9 teams to get promoted, they're the only side that don't appear in the top 13 highest wage bills ever. Just crazy stuff, hey? Shout out to the Swiss Ramble Substack, where I got all of the data from. And if after that you still want more of this money talk, then click here. I spent nearly an hour talking to Price of Football podcast host Kieran Maguire on the Championship financial landscape just last week.